She marched up my driveway like she had every right to be there, her finger stabbing the air as she pointed straight at my wife. Her voice was loud, sharp, designed to draw attention. "She's carrying a gun. Call the police right now." Karen wasn't requesting anything. She was issuing orders. Curtains shifted along the street as neighbors peeked out, curious but unwilling to step outside. My wife didn't react at all. She stood relaxed, arms folded, her side, holster plainly visible. Karen shook a thick binder in the air, yelling about HOA regulations and how firearms were forbidden in her neighborhood. My wife lifted an eyebrow, almost entertained, and replied calmly, "You sure that's the call you want to make?" Karen grinned, already dialing 911, convinced the ending was already written. What she didn't know, and what I didn't bother correcting, was that the last time my wife had been questioned about carrying a weapon, it wasn't by a homeowner. It was by a governor, the same one who personally handed her the badge she still carried. Karen paced back and forth on the sidewalk, phone pressed to her ear, exaggerating every sentence like she was performing for an audience. "Yes, officer, she's armed. She's a threat. Please hurry before someone gets hurt." She let her voice wobble just enough to sound convincing. When she hung up, she smiled smugly at my wife. "You'll be cuffed any second now," she sneered. My wife simply leaned back against the mailbox, calm and unmoved. She never reached for her weapon, just kept her arms folded. I could practically see Karen's confidence swelling with every passing second. She believed she was in charge until sirens shattered the quiet. 2 patrol cars rolled in fast, lights flashing, tires screeching to a stop. Officers jumped out, hands hovering near their holsters, moving quickly toward us. Now, the neighbors were fully out on their porches, whispering, waiting for the spectacle Karen had promised. Karen thrust her arm toward my wife and shouted, "That's her. She's the one breaking the law." One officer slowed, eyes locking onto my wife. She remained perfectly still, then calmly reached into her jacket. Karen gasped, certain she'd caught her in the act. But what my wife pulled out made everyone freeze. She raised it slowly, letting the sun reflect off polished metal. It wasn't a weapon. It was a badge, official and unmistakable. The officers stopped mid-step, hands dropping from their holsters as recognition hit them. Karen blinked hard, her triumphant smile dissolving into confusion. One officer straightened instantly, his tone shifting to respect. "Ma'am, are you?" My wife nodded once. The younger officer stepped closer, read the engraving, and his eyes widened. He leaned toward his partner and whispered, "She outranks us." Karen's jaw fell open. "That's not possible. She lives here. I've seen her mowing her lawn." My wife smiled faintly. "And I still protect my community even off duty." For the first time, Karen faltered. The officers repositioned themselves, and it wasn't toward my wife. The entire street went silent. Karen's face flushed red as she stomped her heel on the pavement. "You don't understand. She's violating HOA law. Guns aren't allowed. Arrest her. That's your job." She shoved her black binder into one officer's chest, papers scattering across the street. The older officer calmly brushed them aside and fixed Karen with a steady stare. HOA rules don't override state or federal law, and they don't override her badge, his voice carried, drawing murmurs from the crowd. Karen's hands shook, but she pushed harder. "She threatened me. She pointed it at me. I swear." She scanned the neighbors, desperate for backup. No one spoke. A few even shook their heads. One man muttered loudly, "She never touched it." The younger officer flipped open his notepad. "So, false report, misuse of emergency services, interfering with an officer." Each charge drained more color from Karen's face. She stumbled backward. "I was just protecting the neighborhood." My wife stepped forward, voice calm but razor sharp. "Karen, the only threat here is your mouth." Karen unraveled, flailing her arms, trying to reclaim control. "She thinks she's above the law. She's dangerous. She shouldn't even live here." Her shrill voice made a baby cry on a nearby porch. The older officer calmly raised his radio. "Dispatch, we have a false report and possible harassment. Requesting a supervisor." Karen snapped her head toward him. "What? Harassment? No, she's the one breaking the rules. She lunged toward my wife, finger raised before she could get close. The younger officer stepped between them. Back up. Now. His hand hovered over his cuffs as Karen froze in place. She swallowed hard, and that was when my wife finally spoke again. Her words cut through the street so cleanly that everyone leaned forward without realizing it. She looked straight at Karen and said, 42 seconds ago, you called the police to have me arrested. Instead, you just earned yourself a criminal record. A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's face drained of color, the binders slipping from her fingers as pages scattered across the lawn. The officers exchanged a glance, and the younger one reached for his cuffs. Karen staggered back, shaking her head as if denial alone could stop what was happening. No, you can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I run this neighborhood, she screamed, her voice cracking under the strain. The older officer exhaled slowly, clearly done with the performance. Ma'am, the only thing you're running out of is excuses. He nodded once, and the younger officer stepped in, snapping the cuffs open. Karen shrieked and twisted away. Don't touch me. I'll sue all of you. I'll have your badges stripped. She fought so hard one heel snapped loudly against the pavement. The neighbors couldn't contain themselves anymore. Quiet laughter spread, mixed with murmurs as phones came out to record. My wife spoke again, her voice calm, unshaken. You wanted attention, Karen. Congratulations. Now, the entire town gets to watch. The cuffs closed around Karen's wrists with a sharp metallic click. She froze, eyes darting wildly as reality finally settled in. The younger officer began reading her rights, while the older one picked up the fallen binder, flipping through the pages with a bored expression. He shook his head. Not worth the paper it's printed on. Karen tried one last time, her voice reduced to a bitter whisper. You'll regret this. But when she turned, every neighbor was looking at her not with fear, but relief. And in that silence, it was obvious her control was gone. As the officers guided her toward the cruiser, her protests faded beneath the sound of neighbors whispering and recording. The same people who once avoided her gaze were now watching openly as the bully was led away. She kept shouting over her shoulder, "You all need me. Without me, this place will fall apart." No one stepped forward. Not a single person. The older officer opened the back door, and Karen was placed inside, firm but without cruelty. The door slammed shut with the finality that felt like the end of something long overdue. My wife stood tall, not celebrating, not smiling, her hand resting easily near her holster. Then something unexpected happened. The two officers turned back toward my wife and straightened their uniforms. In one smooth motion, they saluted. The entire street went silent, phones lowering as everyone realized this wasn't just a neighborhood argument, it was respect being given. Thank you for your service, Captain, the older officer said, his voice steady and sincere. My wife nodded once, no pride, no show, just authority earned. I looked around and saw the shift in everyone's eyes. They weren't just relieved Karen was gone. They felt safe, knowing who lived among them. Karen's muffled screams faded as the cruiser pulled away, and for the first time in years, the street was quiet. The taillights disappeared around the corner, and the neighbors lingered, stunned by what they had just witnessed. For so long, Karen ruled through fear, threats, and fake power. In less than an hour it all collapsed, and she was the one in handcuffs. One neighbor stepped forward, the same man she once fined for parking too close to the curb. We should have spoken up a long time ago, he said. But I guess justice shows up when it's ready. Others nodded, relief written across their faces. My wife turned toward me, her expression finally softening. Bullies always think they're untouchable, she said quietly. But the law doesn't bend for them. Not here. Not ever. Applause broke out, not just for her, but for the end of the fear that had ruled the street. Children peeked out from doorways, parents smiled, and the sound filled the night. As we walked back toward our porch, I reflected on what had happened. Karen thought her binder gave her power, but it wasn't HOA rules that decided this neighborhood's future. It was the badge on my wife's side, and the truth finally standing in the open. And under that porch light, I knew one thing for sure. She hadn't just protected our home. She'd given the entire community its dignity back.